Hey everyone, SKL here and welcome back to Piston Pundit. Today we're shifting gears, looking at how the roar of engines collides with the roar of international politics. We're diving into a turbocharged trade war between the US and EU, with France at the wheel, and the stakes are nothing less than the future of your next car and the global economy. This isn't just about tariffs, it's about alliances, supply chains, and the price you'll pay for your next EV. We'll break down how France is leading the charge, forging new alliances, and what it all means for drivers and consumers caught in the crossfire. What happens in the boardroom is now parked in your garage. Let's get into it. The Trump administration's super tariffs hit like an economic earthquake, targeting everything from European steel to luxury cars. Markets tanked, BMW, Mercedes, and Volkswagen stocks nosedived, and investors scrambled for cover. For European automakers, decades of transatlantic supply chains suddenly faced massive tolls, threatening jobs and investment. American companies weren't spared. Tariffs raised costs for US manufacturers relying on European parts, squeezing profits and risking higher prices for consumers. Ports and factories on both sides of the Atlantic were thrown into chaos, with goods stuck in limbo and production plans upended. Economists predicted billions in lost trade and a serious hit to global growth. The psychological blow was just as severe. Long-standing allies now saw each other as adversaries. French, German, and Italian leaders quickly realized that a passive response would invite more aggression. The EU, with France leading, began plotting a strategic, targeted retaliation. The products we love, French wine, Italian cheese, German sedans, became pawns in a high-stakes chess match. The question, would Europe absorb the blow or fight back? The answer came fast, and it spoke French. Across Europe, leaders strategized, determined to show unity and strength. The stage was set for a calculated response, not a knee-jerk reaction. The world watched as the first shots of a new trade war echoed across the Atlantic. The old order was cracking, and the next moves would define the future of global trade. The EU's resolve was clear: they wouldn't be bullied. The initial shock faded, replaced by a steely determination to defend European interests. The retaliation would be precise, strategic, and designed to hit the US where it hurt most. The transatlantic partnership was now a battleground. The game of chicken had truly begun. France took the lead, orchestrating a sharp, unified EU response. Instead of blanket tariffs, the EU targeted iconic American products, Harley-Davidson's, Bourbon, Levi's, hitting politically sensitive US regions. The European Crisis Tariff Network coordinated these moves, ensuring the EU acted as one powerful bloc. French diplomats worked back channels, signaling Europe's readiness to escalate, but also to negotiate. The EU filed a case at the WTO, claiming the US tariffs broke international law. France pushed for strategic autonomy, accelerating investment in tech, green energy, and pharmaceuticals. The crisis forced unprecedented cooperation among EU members, forging a stronger European economic identity. The message was clear: for every US tariff, the EU would match it. Reciprocity was the new rule. This wasn't about starting a trade war, but about showing the US that Europe could hit back with precision. The EU's unity became its greatest weapon, preventing the US from dividing and conquering. The retaliatory tariffs were a calculated risk, betting that US industries would pressure Washington to retreat. The world watched as Europe defended its industries, not by building walls, but by making sure the US felt the cost of its own. The EU's response was about more than trade, it was about asserting Europe's place in the global order. France's leadership was clear: Europe would not be pushed around. The next phase would test whether this strategy could force a US retreat. The stakes had never been higher. The world was watching. France didn't just play defense, it pivoted east, accelerating a strategic shift toward Asia. With the US unpredictable, diversifying trade became a survival strategy. France led the EU in forging deep partnerships with Japan, South Korea, India, and ASEAN, setting new standards for digital trade, data privacy, and green tech. The EU-Japan Economic Partnership Agreement was a landmark, creating a massive free trade zone and giving French automakers a boost in Japan. The message to Washington: close your doors and we'll open new ones elsewhere. France also championed supply chain resilience, pushing for European production of critical tech like chips and EV batteries. The goal reduced dependence on any single country, especially the US or China. This third way aimed to make Europe an independent global pole, not just a US or China follower. France promoted tech partnerships with Asia, challenging Silicon Valley's dominance and co-authoring the next digital revolution. Navigating Asia's complex politics wasn't easy, But France saw it as a long-term investment. Engaging with China was a balancing act: cooperate on climate, push back on unfair trade. The pivot to Asia was bold, acknowledging that the old post-war certainties were gone. France was steering the EU toward a future with diverse partners and resilient supply chains. The new destination, European economic independence in a multipolar world, the race for global influence was on. The trade war didn't just shake markets, it rattled NATO's foundations. France seized the moment, arguing Europe couldn't rely on a security guarantee from a country treating it as an economic rival. The result, a surge in Buy European defense spending, with France and Germany fast-tracking projects like the Future Combat Air System. The trade war became the biggest catalyst for European defense integration in decades. European security priorities shifted. Cyber threats, supply chain security, and energy independence now rivaled traditional military concerns. The US wanted Europe to spend more on defense, but not at the expense of American contractors, sparking new friction. China's rise complicated things further, forcing Europe to balance engagement with caution, especially in tech infrastructure. The debate over NATO's future intensified, with France pushing for a stronger European pillar within the alliance. The new reality: security isn't just about tanks, but about economic resilience and technological sovereignty. France's push for strategic autonomy was a direct response to this new world. Europe was building its own defense capabilities, ready to act independently if needed. The trade war forced a fundamental reassessment of what it means to be an ally. The old model was gone. A new, more self-reliant Europe was emerging. The stakes: Europe's ability to defend itself in a world where alliances can shift overnight. The battle lines had been redrawn. The economic fallout was real. Factories slowed, investments stalled, and growth forecasts dropped across the Eurozone. France's luxury exports took a hit, but its diversified economy offered some insulation. The uncertainty froze hiring and expansion as businesses waited for clarity. France and the EU responded with state aid and strategic investment, supporting industries hit hardest by tariffs. The EU flexed its regulatory muscle, introducing measures like the Carbon Border Adjustment Mechanism to protect its industries and advance climate goals. The crisis accelerated Europe's green and digital transitions, with France investing in battery plants, hydrogen, and AI. The trade war exposed Europe's dependence on foreign pharmaceuticals and microchips, sparking a push to reshore critical production. The labor market shifted, old jobs faded, but new opportunities in green tech and advanced manufacturing emerged. Governments launched retraining programs to help workers transition. The business mindset changed. Agility, diversification, and risk management became the new normal. Companies built redundancy into supply chains, accepting higher costs for greater resilience. The pain was real, but so was the transformation. The trade war forced Europe to confront its vulnerabilities and accelerate its evolution. France led the charge, turning crisis into a catalyst for a more self-reliant, competitive Europe. The engines of a new industrial strategy were firing up. The old growth model was gone. Resilience was the new watchword. Europe was preparing to thrive in a tougher world. We're at a crossroads. The global trade map has been redrawn, and the transatlantic relationship is now a tense standoff. Trade flows between the US and Europe are down, while Europe's ties with Asia are growing. Defense spending is turning inward, and supply chains are being rebuilt for resilience. The world is splitting into economic blocs, with the EU aiming to be an independent third pole. The next moves, de-escalate or double down, will shape global manufacturing, tech, and security for decades. Can the US and EU reset their partnership, or is Europe's pivot to autonomy now permanent? The fallout affects everything from car prices to job security. France and the EU have refused to be passive, leveraging their market power and forging new alliances. The final chapter isn't written. The road ahead will define the global order. Will Europe U-turn back to the old alliance, or keep cruising down its independent lane? The stakes are enormous, and the world is watching. This debate isn't just for politicians, it's for all of us. The answers are being forged right now, in the heat of this crisis. As we pull into the pits, the race is far from over. July 9th is the next big pit stop. Will Europe reset with Washington or keep forging its own path? The outcome will shape everything from EV prices to global supply chains. Now I want to hand the wheel to you. Should Europe keep pushing for autonomy or seek a truce? Is France's pivot to Asia a smart long-term move? How will these tariffs affect the cars and tech you buy? Drop your thoughts below. Thanks for watching.